Chapter 782, Half-Saint Xuanlong. This chapter is updated by novels.pl. The man in the bloody clothes was surrounded by many apparitions. The scene was like countless gods in harmony, radiating with blinding light. Leader Lin Yue, Mujiji said excitedly. Senior brother apprentice Lin Yue actually walked out of the sacrificial altar. Had he been refining divine blood? The young monks of the Yin and Yang sect were all excited when they saw Lin Yue. The Moonbarrier Sword Scent and Ning Xuandao exchanged glances, feeling relieved. Whoosh! Lin Yue suddenly flew up from the altar. He transformed into a blood-red pillar of light and shot into the sky. He quickly disappeared in the clouds. The next moment, the blood-red light rushed to the ground at an even faster speed. Only the half-saint elders could see clearly that Lin Yue was at the top of the beam of light. Holding the void sword, he stabbed downward. Sword chi radiated from the void sword, forming a windstorm. The swordsmen near it were all blown away. Such strong sword intent. Shaolin's expression turned ugly. He formed a sword gesture and used an imperial sword technique to thrust out the rose-finch sword. He exclaimed in a low voice, "Fourth level of sword 2. Alternating yin and yang. Hot flames poured from the rose-finch sword. It formed a 300-foot wide Tichi print. Two huge rose-finches circled the print. Thousands upon thousands of red sword-shaped chi rushed out of the Tichi print like rain. They flew up with the rose-finch sword. Kaboom! An ear-splitting boom came from the square. Chaotic sword chi formed a huge tidal wave. It flooded out in all directions. After the sword chi subsided, everyone looked towards the center of the square. All they saw was that the void sword had passed through Shaolin's heart. He was nailed to the ground. Bright red blood gushed out of his heart. Lin Yue stood to the side. He grasped the void sword's hilt gracefully and pulled it out of Shaolin's body. The snowy white blade was now bright red. The entire place was silent. One could barely even hear breathing. Even the saints were extremely shocked. Lin Yue actually killed Shaolin with one strike. Is this a hallucination? A young monk rubbed his eyes and looked back at the square center. Shaolin is one of the 9 heirs and he drank the holy spring, but he couldn't even take one of Lin Yue's hits. Lin Yue is only in the 8th change of the fish dragon realm. How can he be so strong? Did he use some weapon or outside force to kill Shaolin? No matter what, no one could accept the fact that someone in the 8th change of the fish dragon realm could kill an heir. The 9 heirs had drank the holy spring. They far surpassed any monks in their generation. How could they still not be invincible? Many people suspected that Lin Yue had borrowed the power of some saint. After all, Lin Yue had once borrowed Saint Lady's spiritual power to defeat Snake 2 of the moon worship demonic sect. Of course, all the saints present could see that Lin Yue had used his own power to kill Shaolin with one strike. He hadn't used outside help at all. This was the fact that had shocked the saints. If he became a saint, the other saints in the world would be pushed into the background. He would be the bright moon in the sky while the others were only stars orbiting around him. Gai Danjiao began laughing. He deserved it. He really did. This is what should happen to traitors. So many monks of the Yin and Yang sect had wanted to kill of Shaolin, ridding the sect of impurities, but he was too strong. The monks who'd gone against him all ended up dying. Lin Yue's attack was honestly too domineering. He killed Shaolin cleanly, boosting the morale of the Yin and Yang sect. Sword Saint Xuanji's eyes narrowed. He also seemed impressed with his vision. He could obviously see that Zhang Yuochen's cultivation had improved greatly again. This guy must have completed Sword 2 and even added in some conceptions of Sword 3. This isn't easy, Sword Saint Xuanji thought. His disciples were behind him. First disciple Saint King Xiao, second disciple Zhu Hongtao, third disciple Wonk, fourth disciple Feng Han, fifth disciple Half-Saint Lingxiu, and seventh disciple Huang Yanjun. Half-Saint Lingxiu had gotten taller again. She was now 12 inches but was still dressed in red clothing. She sat on Zhu Hongtao's right shoulder and widened her pretty eyes. This fish dragon monk is actually more advanced in the Tao of the Sword than I am. He is truly a genius. Sixth brother is still alive, Zhu Hongtao said roughly. He can compete with this man. Fourth disciple Feng Han's face was pale, seemingly sick. He coughed and laughed darkly. Even if sixth brother is still alive, He can't be Lin Yui's match. Lin Yui is a once-in-a-millennium genius. Didn't you see how the heir couldn't even take one hit? There are many talents in the world now. Even the 9 heirs aren't without enemies. Feng Han's attitude had become ambiguous and sarcastic after returning. Hearing his words, Zhu Hongtao felt uncomfortable. However, Feng Han was the most talented of the group. He'd also been injured greatly from his recent adventure. Zhu Hongtao just felt that his attitude was because he hadn't healed completely and didn't mind it too much. The most important thing now was his master's final battle with the 9 Serenity Sword Saint. He could investigate everything else after the Sword Technique Conference. The disciples of the Yin and Yang sect were obviously excited, but the monks of the Four Symbols sect were enraged. An elder with a red dot between his brows walked out from the Four Symbols sect camp. You Yin and Yang sect are so shameless, he denounced. Lin Yui must have borrowed outside help to defeat Shaolin. This elder was half-cent Xuanlong. He was already 106 years old and had reached the half-cent realm 50 years ago. He was one of Shaolin's senior brother apprentices. How dare you! Ning Xuandao's expression was serious. Powerful holy chi surged out of him as he said, "All the saints present have eyes and can decide whether Lin Yui used his own power or outside help. You are only a half-saint. How dare you slander the Yin and Yang sect?" Hit by Ning Xuandao's chi, half-saint Xuanlong actually felt a hallucination. It was as if the sky had fallen down. Enormous might pressed down on him, making it hard to breathe. He immediately took 3 steps back to dissolve the pressure. Then he said, "Ning Xuandao, don't think that I'll fear you just because your cultivation is higher. I'm sure no saint present can believe that a monk in the 8th change of the fish dragon realm can use his own power to kill an heir, correct?" Low murmurs immediately sounded outside the sword pavilion. The Moonbriar Sword Saint's eyes were cold. Half-Saint Xuanlong, I advise you to speak with evidence. Do not take a shot in the dark. If you cannot produce evidence today to prove that Lin Yui borrowed outside force, I will not let you go for slandering the Yin and Yang sect. Are you threatening me? Half-Saint Xuanlong didn't show any fear against the Moonbriar Sword Saint. He scoffed. Lin Yui's Void Sword is a top saint weapon. It must be extremely profound. If a saint from the Yin and Yang sect put his power inside beforehand and then Lin Yui used that power during the conference, we might not be able to tell. Half-Saint Xuanlong's words really caused a commotion. After all, most of the monks present hadn't seen a true top saint weapon before. Naturally, they weren't clear how powerful a saint weapon could be either. It might really be how he said. The Void Sword indeed could store a saint's power. For a super sect like the Yin and Yang sect, reputation was very important. The saints present were clear that Lin Yui had used his own power, but if a group of monks purposely spread the rumor, the sect's reputation would be destroyed. It would be mocked and doubted by all the monks in the world. There wasn't a lack of that type of people here. After all, Zhang Yuochen was too powerful and had stolen the heir's spotlight. So many people were jealous of him. Zhang Yuochen looked over to half-Saint Xuanlong, Senior. He said calmly, "If you doubt my abilities, how about a duel?" Half-Saint Xuanlong sneered fiercely. "You dare to duel with me?" No one present expected that Lin Yui would actually challenge Half-Saint Xuanlong. He was too confident in himself. Zhang Yuochen put his void sword away and nodded. "Senior, didn't you claim that I'd defeated Shaolin by borrowing some saint's power inside the Void Sword? In that case, I will officially challenge you and not use the Void Sword." Not use the Void Sword? The monks present instantly fell into an uproar. Many people thought that Lin Yui was practically more arrogant than Shaolin. Half-Saint Xuanlong was already a second-level half-saint and had undetectable abilities. A monk in the 8th change of the Fish Dragon realm couldn't compete with him. The Moonbriar Sword Saint felt that Lin Yui had crossed the line and quickly tried to stop him. "Lin Yui, go back now. The sect will take care of this." Zhang Yuochen glanced at him and said, "Sword Saint, if I don't use my own abilities to defeat this man, the Yin and Yang sect will be defamed by more people in the future." Zhang Yuochen wanted to fight with Half-Saint Xuanlong because he wanted to see just how powerful he was without using the Void Sword. After all, he'd refined 4 drops of divine blood in the altar. He wanted to use this fight to get his body accustomed to the new power. Half-Saint Xuanlong was afraid Lin Yui would renege, so he quickly agreed to it. Chuckling, he said, "Great. You are indeed a young hero. Lin Yue, if you can take 10 of my attacks without using the Void Sword, I'll believe that you had the ability to defeat Shaolin. I will also apologize to you and the Yin and Yang sect for what I said earlier." Now, there was no way to stop this battle. The Moonbarrier Sword Saint sent a telepathic message to Zhang Yuochen. "You must be careful. Something is off with Half-Saint Xuanlong. It's highly possible he will try to kill you." Zhang Yuochen glanced in the Moonbarrier Sword Saint's direction and nodded subtly.